Hello again. W. Schnell, Life at Bethel in the late 1930s. This is 124 in 30 Years a Watchtower Slave. 4 days after this interview with the judge, that is his interview to accept Bethel life, I arrived at Bethel. I was given a nice room on the first floor, sharing it with another lad who served as secretary to the office servant. I soon discovered that things were the same as they had been in Magdeburg, that is, Germany, Bethel. Very obviously, the pattern prepared in Germany was used. At meal times, the entire family gathered. In the morning, the daily manna was read, questions were asked about the contents, and answers were called for. With only 30 minutes allotted for breakfast, this program made it necessary to hurry if we were going to get enough to eat. The noon meal was interspersed with stories of experiences and, again, questions and answers. Nothing in the evening. Everybody was tired, and most members of the family were going to do a lot of talking anyway in some evening meeting. I noticed, though, that assembly at the table was not often used to reprimand or scold brethren like it had been in Magdeburg. This was done with more telling finesse behind the scenes. It seems that they had had the thing better organized here. However, from time to time, the judge would bear down on the family at the table. Then it really mattered. The department heads would cringe and twist then. One day, he had the purchasing agent on the carpet in the presence of the whole family. And did he make him squirm? It appeared that he had told the purchasing agent to get a fan. It had turned hot and still no fan. Not only did the judge make the poor fellow the butt of his scathing sarcasm, but he roundly castigated him before us all. And now the subhead is Spies Everywhere. As soon as I had gotten settled in the New York quarters, I checked whether they had a spy system in the family. I observed the personnel carefully for a few days and then approached those brethren I felt to be free of insincerity and duplicity. When I guardedly began to question them as to who the spies were in our midst, they certainly gave me a surprised look. Fear crossed their features, since they thought that I myself might be a spy. I quickly allayed their fears, pointing out that I had already served 3.5 years at Magdeburg and thus knew all about the spy system and how it worked. I simply explained that I did not want to do or say anything in the presence of such spies which might get me into trouble. I did not tell them that I also wanted to know them in order to get remarks spread about myself, which would make it easier for me to get released. That first part they could understand and inform me about the men involved. To my surprise, I was placed in the surface department and given charge of the pioneer desk. It was a responsible position. It was my duty to handle all assignments, grievances, appointments, and services. I had to answer questions and help solve problems. I suppose my long pioneer experience, coupled with office experience and training, brought me that assignment. The office servant introduced me to the service department servant, who, he explained, was the last resort. With a straight face, the office servant seriously told me this man knew everything. I had never before seen a man who knew everything, and naturally I looked with keen interest upon him and found a pair of knowing eyes fixed on me, and particularly noting my reactions to that remark. When I saw that, I puckered up my face. He was evidently satisfied with what he saw. On my part, I really was utterly amazed and somewhat showed it. He purred, "We will get along nicely." I took to my work easily and soon mastered my job. Next to me sat a member who I instinctively felt was a reporter for the office servant. Not being quite sure, I tested the status of this member by telling in all confidence that I thought this office system was antiquated. I said that I thought rather that each of us doing our own correspondence, we should have special correspondents to whom we could dictate our letters for the sake of greater efficiency and accuracy, and also for checking what was going on out of the office. Only a day later I was called to the sanctorum of the office servant and told that the system used had been evolved over the years and that it suited our particular job. He advised me that since I was new here, I should make any suggestion I had to him. Of course, I knew that was good office procedure, but what he did not know was that I was trying to find out who of my neighbors were his spies. Naturally, he told me by this conference that the member to whom I had confided was his spy. In one way or another, I soon learned that the brother to the right was true blue and no spy. In front of me, on the other hand, was another spy. It did not take long for me to realize that the setup in New York was just as bad as had been that in Magdeburg. After putting up with it for about 2 months, I had enough of it. I wrote the judge a note asking him to relieve me, reminding him diplomatically of his promise that I could do so if I did not like it. That did not go over very well. Inasmuch as the Columbus, Ohio Convention of 1937 was at hand, I was asked to stay until after the convention. I was put in charge of transportation and organized a special train. In the meanwhile, it became very clear that I was under surveillance and was even being followed. Often a brother would get to my father's house in Washington Heights ahead of me to see whether I was actually going home or going somewhere else. I knew from what we had done in Magdeburg that they were gathering a dossier about me, which they would use to hold me in line were I inclined to break free. I decided I was going to give them a merry ride and really do a lot of things which I knew at some time would come home to roost. The folder of my dossier was filling up. I wondered when they would use it. To my amazement, I was allowed to leave Bethel in apparent good standing after the convention. The service department servant, to whom I had been introduced as the one who knew everything, merely said, "I guess you don't like us here." I was permitted to remain as unit servant of Manhattan, which position I held from September 1937 until August of 1938. To my complete surprise, in view of my relationship with the society, when the theocracy of 1938 was established, I received the assignment to become an exactor or zone servant of northeastern Ohio and northern Pennsylvania. Upon receiving my assignment, I was given specific instructions and also told about the failure of the companies in this area to raise issues. It was explained that this was what clearly was expected of me. That's the end of chapter 14. Next time, chapter 15, a 7-step program, and the use of the phonograph is introduced. I'll put in a link to Judge Rutherford's little-known prophecy just before World War II that America would be defeated by fascism. See you soon.